This episode is brought to you by Temptations Cat Treats. Your cat will come running for the perfectly irresistible Temptations Creamy Puree and Temptations Lickable Spoon Cat Treats. The best time to feed lickable cat treats to your cat is anytime. Feed by hand for a playful moment, in a bowl for a creamy treat, or as a topper to make mealtime fun. Visit temptationstreats.com to learn more.
Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for the stay.
Welcome to Her Extraordinary Life by Design, where we celebrate women who are shaping their lives one extraordinary day at a time. I'm your host, Leslie Gaudet, self-care coach for women who are ready to make self-care a priority to support them in life and business. Every week, I'll be speaking with inspiring women from various walks of life who will share their personal journeys and will discover how they have fearlessly carved their own paths as business owners, passionately pursuing their dreams and creating a meaningful impact on their communities. So let's get started. Hello, and welcome to Extraordinary Life by Design podcast. I'm your host, Leslie Gaudet, and today we're talking with Mimi Zieman. Mimi is a physician, writer, mother of 3 grown children, and women's health advocate with a new memoir, Tap Dancing on Everest, about the risks we take to become our truest selves. Her play, The Post-Row Monologues, has been performed in multiple cities, and her medical guide, Managing Contraception, is in its 17th edition. Mimi, I'm so excited to have you join me today, so welcome to the show.
Thank you, Leslie. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you.
Well, I am really excited to have this conversation with you today to not only explore the incredible work that you're doing, but also your journey and your fascinating experience that you captured in your memoir, Tap Dancing on Everest. We will dive into that in a little bit. But first, before we get into today's discussion, I'd really love to hear a little bit more about your background, what initially inspired you to pursue a career in medicine, and how has that journey shaped who you are today?
Well, thank you, Leslie. There were a lot of inspirations for my journey in medicine. My family background is one. My father was the only survivor of the Holocaust from his family, and he became a therapist to help other people. So I think that message of helping people in some way was always there, although initially I actually wanted to be a vet and help animals. But there was some of that. Then there were some experiences along the way, and some of those I record in my book. And then there was my curiosity about just biology in the body and loved studying those topics. So everything sort of combined for me to choose the field of medicine. But I have to say I have pivoted many times in my career, so it's not been a typical private practice sort of medical career. And the other important aspect of what I chose in medicine is I did also have a strong feminist influence as a child. Both my mother and grandmother were single mothers. And they had this message of sort of never depend on a man. So I did want a kind of steady career. And I went into medicine thinking I wanted to be an OBGYN and take care of women and advocate for women because of their influence. And that's also shaped my career because a lot of it has been in advocacy.
Actually, that helps me transition really nicely into my question around your career in medicine and your advocacy for women's health, because it has been a central theme. Can you share can you go a little bit deeper in what drove you to champion these issues and how that passion has shaped your professional path? Because you've said it's changed a little bit for you.
Yes. So I specialized in OBGYN, studying at Columbia, New York, and then I did a fellowship in family planning at University of California, San Francisco. And family planning is really all about women's self-determination over their lives because it covers the field of contraception and abortion. And I was then recruited to lead that program here in Atlanta at Emory University School of Medicine. And I found that when I advocated for women and women's right to autonomy over their bodies and self-determination, it just aligned very strongly with my values and ignites a sense of purpose even beyond the one-on-one medical practice, which is also very rewarding. And so I've continued to do that.
Yeah, I love that. I really loved your path. Like you were saying, you had different influences. And, part of that influence, I think, has allowed you to explore, like it's giving you that purpose or that courage, I guess, to explore other areas and not just be, like you were saying, it was you in the beginning, it was veterinary care because you love animals. And I think that's great, still, but then you started going a little deeper into your studies and found that there were different areas that really actually spoke to you as well. So I really love that.
Well, also, there's the external advocacy wanting to help the world, and then there's your internal drive to be authentic, which I think has led me to pivot many times in my career. So I think it's all sort of intertwined in a way, because
Yeah,
I know
absolutely.
that's a lot of what you stand for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what I really love is that you can, like, a lot of the time women feel, well, a lot of the women that I've talked to, growing up and just from my generation, it was always that you had to pick something. Like there was never this idea that we could actually do more than one thing. And usually if we were doing more than one thing, it was usually our career and then wife and mom. Those were
Right.
the two choices.
Yes.
I love today's world that we're living in, and a lot of the young women who are now coming up behind me and behind us is that they are now deciding on multiple things that they want to do, and I think that's amazing, and especially because we are now supporting each other this way, and yeah, I think that's really important to state because I think it can be we can think about it in I guess, not necessarily the olden days, but the days of our grandparents growing up. And there was that tradition of the man going out into the world and the woman being the person who cared for the children, the housewife. So she cared for the children, she cared for the home, she took care of every aspect of that, which in itself is not necessarily an easy job. And people probably a lot of the time thought that, oh, that's just so easy. But I can't imagine that being an easy job. I'm not a mom, so but I still cannot imagine that. And then, of course, being a single mom, but we have that in common. My mom as well, raising her, she had three, well, actually she had four. One was in and out most of the time either with his dad or with us, but she was on her own raising her kids. So different, like from when our parents or grandparents were growing up and now our generation, and then now the generation behind us. I just love to see the changes,
Yeah. I couldn't
I love
agree
it.
more. I think today there's so many more opportunities to try to do different things at once. Whereas my career is mostly pivots to things at different times in my life. But I think there's a better ability to balance various interests at once now.
Yeah, and not be afraid to do it. I think that's the thing is that now we're really empowering each other to not be afraid and actually say, yes, I can. Let me check it out, at least to explore it. Right. And so
Yeah.
that's what I love. Yeah.
Yeah. And
So let's
that's
talk.
literally the message of my book. Yes, I can, even if I'm
Exactly.
afraid, even if I'm
Oh,
afraid.
yeah.
Because you don't
Oh,
have to
yeah.
feel like you've got it all together or you know everything at the start. And I think that's what holds a lot of people back. I'm not ready. I'm not prepared. I need to do more research. And sometimes you just have to jump in.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it's funny that you say that because I'm actually in the midst of writing two books myself. I've got the outline. That's as far as I've gotten, but that's a lot further than I was last year. And just realizing that, okay, either I'm putting it out there now because I'm now speaking it publicly. So now that means, okay, I'm speaking it publicly. I'm going to do this and I can find a way to actually put that in there because it only becomes hard if I make it hard. So
Yeah, and
yeah.
that's a big step, speaking it publicly. I
Yeah.
did that also from the start of my writing journey, and sometimes I regretted it. Because then people ask, how's the book going? But
Yeah.
I think it is good for us to commit in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. So, well, let's talk about self care for a moment. As a physician, a writer, a mother of three, so you've worn many hats. How have you managed to balance your roles, the roles that you've taken on, pursue your passions as well, and then ensure self-care remains a priority in your life?
That's a real challenge for me. I have not often made self-care a priority, and especially in the years of raising my kids, they were the priority: work, marriage, family. My kids actually look at pictures of me from that time and can't believe how bad I looked. And I could tell them I was the lowest on my rung of priorities, you know. But of course, if we don't practice self-care, our well runs dry. So it's very important, but it's a real challenge for me even today when I have much more time to make that a priority. So I'm probably not the best person to give advice except to say we have to do it and it's really important. I'm doing it now. I have committed to, exercising regularly and definitely eating more healthy and trying to have more downtime.
Well, I appreciate your honesty because, you could have said, yeah, well, I do all of this and this is the way my life is. But you are now, obviously, you started making yourself a priority. And again, it's not perfect for anyone. Even someone like this is what I do. I'm a self-care strategist, and that's what I do. I help women to infuse a way of life, strategies or just systems in their life that really support them mindset wise so that they can have, to be able to balance their roles and their priorities, right? And so I don't always get it right. There's times where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm really feeling it. I'm tired. And I realize, okay, I could either just keep pushing or I'm going to end up in burnout. So I recognize those signs. So it's not a perfect way of, it's like not like, oh, now I've got it all figured out that every time I'll never get into trouble that way. But I do know when something is off. I recognize those signs. And I think it's really powerful that you actually at least said, I wasn't always necessarily that way, but now I'm making sure that I'm exercising, I'm, taking care of my nutrition, and being open about it. That again, you're a doctor, the things that are important for our bodies, for our brains, for everything about us. And you said, even though you also ended up on the low end of the totem pole and when you were raising your family. So again, I love that you were open and honest about it because you could have just said, no, yeah, it's great. I make sure that I do it. But this to me is about being authentic. That's what I love about this podcast is women who come on here and authentically being themselves and sharing about themselves and letting people know like, yeah, I'm successful at what I do, but I'm still a human being. And sometimes I'm not always perfect for myself. So I love that you did that. Thank you.
I will share the things that I do that restore me a lot. I mean, I do know what it is that fills my well and restores me. And that is being outside in nature. And that's an easy one. I mean, you could just go outside for a few minutes. Yin yoga, and I don't know if you know that kind of yoga, but
love it.
I will not miss my yin yoga classes, which combine meditation, stretching, and in the studio I go, Buddhist life lessons. So she's just like a threefer, and movement. And that's in my book too. I mean, me moving just makes me feel so much better. And that's why dancing and hiking are through lines through my book, because they're where I felt most happy, most whole, and still do.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. So now I want to switch gears for a moment. You have a play, The Post Row Monologues, which has been performed in multiple cities. What inspired you to use this creative medium to address such an important and timely topic? And what message do you hope it conveys?
I got the idea during a meeting. It came out of the thin air. Dobbs had just been overturned. I had completed my book, so I had been immersed in writing for 3 years. And actually, when I handed my book to my agent, I thought, well, maybe I'll never write another thing again. And then Dobbs happened. And I was in a meeting to discuss how are we going to educate the community about the repercussions of Dobbs. And I got that idea, inspired by the vagina monologues. And the reason I think the play is so powerful is it presents characters of different backgrounds and ethnicities caught in the circumstances that occur after a decision like Dobbs. And the audience can empathize much more greatly with characters, I believe, than with just reading a news story or even seeing someone 5 minutes on the news. And when you see this tableau of characters, it turned out to be very effective. One thing that I was able to bring to that sort of play or is my medical background, in the sense that a couple of characters, there's a medical student who has to decide where she's going to train now that Dobbs has happened, because it's limited training in her state of Louisiana. There's a director of a clinic, so you see how clinic directors and their staff are impacted. And there is a doctor in a state that's now overrun with patients. Now, first of all, you have to realize I wrote this the month Dobbs happened. So it was all foreseeable if you were in the know, as all OBGYNs were. And it's not a medical play. Those are just 3 characters out of 15. It's just that people really responded to those because it was perspectives that they hadn't heard about or seen very much. But, there's a woman who has to travel for her abortion, and how much more difficult that is than just saying, oh, people can travel. Or a woman who has to have her abortion alone at home, and how challenging that is. And what does she really go through, and what does that entail? So the play goes a little deeper than what you could see on the news. And when you see it all together, that's, an immersive experience.
Yeah, I love that though. Yeah, and it's getting the message out there. It's unfortunate that for women, especially, it's like our voices are sometimes taken away from us. Our decisions are taken away from us, and it's like we're not even invited into the conversation. So
Yes.
I love the fact that you did this play, because I think that at least allows you have a voice as a woman to bring these real world or real like life stories to show the impact of how overturning something, what that can do to a community, can do to a family, can do to a person. And so I
Yes.
love that you did that. So thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you. I mean, it was I felt like it was the perfect confluence of my writing and my medical career for something to educate and advocate also all at once. And after a career of advocating for women just from the physician's perspective, I'm really enjoying the writing perspective as just a different way. But sort of the goals and values are the same, which is exactly what you said, elevating women's stories.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you. Well, now I want to talk about your memoir, Tap Dancing on Everest, which, as I told you before we started recording, that I just purchased it today. And I'm actually looking forward to reading it. I have my Kindle and I'm ready to go. You've said this book is about the risks we take to become our truest selves. So I'm so excited about this. I can't contain myself. But what motivated you to write this deeply personal book? And what do you hope readers take away from your story?
There were a lot of motivations, but one that you're touching on with that question is that I observed in life that there are a lot of people who kind of stay close to home, don't necessarily travel very much, don't necessarily push themselves out of their comfort zone very much. And I had to look back and ask myself, why did you do this? Why did a city girl raised in New York City, born to parents who were refugees who came on the ship, end up, why and how, in Tibet as a 25-year-old medical student, the only woman on a team taking care of all men in the wilderness with no chance for rescue? So obviously that story has risk involved, right? So what drove me? And what drove me was really a gut instinct that I needed to be in the mountains more. The mountains were a place that I immediately lit up, felt whole, felt happy. I discovered the mountains during college in the Rocky Mountains, and one thing led to another, where first I went backpacking alone in Nepal when I was 22, and because of that was later invited on this Everest expedition to be the medical person. The problem was timing. I was still a medical student, and that's what makes it so risky. So, what risks are you willing to take? I was willing to take all those risks because I wanted to be there. I wanted to be in the mountains more than anything and experience their majesty for a longer period of time. And then it turned out to be an honor that I had the skills to be the medical person. But it was a big question. Did I? I was really only a third-year medical student. So there's a lot of questions you can ask. What motivates people to take risks? What does it mean to be your truest self, your authentic self? And these are the questions that was percolating in my mind as I examined my own story to write it.
Yeah. Still, what I'm curious about, like, okay, I understand about wanting to be in the mountains, but Everest is like a beast, It's not like it's this easygoing journey. There was real danger. Like you were saying, no chance of rescue. This was a risk that you were willing to take that possibly, if anything went wrong, you were on your own. And I'm just curious, like, what was your mindset at that time? Like, what was the mindset of the team with this knowing of the risks, like the real risk of the possibility of rescue being needed, but not getting it? Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Well, it's a great question. And I do address it in the book. My mindset was a lot of fear and self-doubt, actually. And I'm very honest about it in the book for a very specific reason, because I pushed through that and went anyway, which would led to incredible growth. And I hope that people will see that they can do things with fear, not that you have to overcome the fear. And I write about that led me to therapy before leaving to make sure I knew what I was getting into and that I actually wanted to do it and could do it. So I write about that in the book. And in therapy, I learned to focus on what was in my control and what I had done, which was a lot of preparation. I studied wilderness medicine. I spoke to experts. I trained physically. So anything we're going to do does involve preparation. Some things involve some leap of faith, which is what I did. What drew me, though, was curiosity, adventure, and this happy feeling in the mountains, which is really what draws all climbers to take on the risks that they do. I don't want anyone to think I was a climber on the team. I was not. And so that's a little different. I didn't have quite as much risk as the climbers did. We were on the East Face, which had only been climbed once before our team. Our team used no supplemental oxygen or Sherpa support. So we were really out there on our own. And what a gift to look back on that now, that to learn that independence of you are on the line and the interdependence that we had to develop as a team. And look, this is decades later where I've had the opportunity to reflect back and look at what we did and look at what I learned from it. And it's just an amazing gift. Now, you mentioned where bad things could happen. You haven't read the book yet. Bad things did happen. But even bad things happening is not a reason not to do something, because that's a sad fact of life too. Bad things make us grow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just it's life. And like you were saying, you just took life by the horns and you said, I'm gonna do it. Otherwise, you could look back. It's that whole thing about there's a book out there, The Five Regrets of the Dying. I don't know if you're familiar with that book, but it's, when you think about the regrets of your life, you could have had this time right now saying, I had the chance to do this and I didn't take the chance because I didn't allow myself the opportunity. It's even for myself, like years ago, I was in my early 20s and my friend and I were in the Dominican Republic and we were trained to scuba dive in a pool at the resort. And then we went scuba diving. Now we had expert divers with us, which was great, but they were supposed to only take us down 30 feet and they ended up taking us down 70. And so if I had allowed my fear of the ocean, because I was afraid of the things that were in there that bite, And I thought, okay, I could today be looking back and saying, oh, if only I wouldn't have had the experience, right? If I had not allowed myself to say, you know what, I'm just going to go for it.
Yeah.
And I went, and it was the most beautiful, amazing experience. I can't even explain it. And I'm sure it's exactly the same. There's that thrill, there's that exhilaration. You
Yes.
come alive. And
Yes.
I'm so glad that I had that opportunity.
Oh,
And I
that's
think, yeah,
wonderful. I did one of those resort diving courses too. You're just reminding me about it. And it is a fantastic experience.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, transitioning from medicine to writing, and I thank you so much about sharing, first of all, about your memoir. I'm excited, like I said, to dive into it. It's just fascinating to me, your story, and I really want to know more. But let's get on to your from where you went from medicine. You went from like medicine to writing and advocacy. Like that's no small feat because you're medicine, practicing as a doctor, and then you're like writing is obviously it's not easy because there's that whole thought process like how do you outline it, how do you shape this book, what's the story, what's the purpose, what's the intent for the outcome for your readers, and then advocating for women and our rights and being able to have a voice. That to me is like incredible. Like this is a legacy that your children can see like, wow, mom did all of this. How has your journey as an entrepreneur evolved with all of these things that have shaped you? And what challenges do you think as you look back you faced in building this unique blend of careers?
That's a great question. I was reminded of a term this week. I listened to a podcast talking about emotional labor. And it was in the context of them saying that emotional labor happens when you're, for example, at work and work is not aligned with your values and who you see yourself to be and who you are. And I loved listening to that because that's really driven my career, but I didn't have that language to articulate it. So I started out in academia, which I worked in for 10 years, and it was a great job on paper, but it just didn't feel right. And I loved a lot of things what I was doing, but I didn't love the corporate atmosphere. So I took those skills and knowledge and became a consultant with my own business to do the same work, but where I was the boss of myself. And it was just really the best 10 years. My children were young, so I had flexibility. And I did a variety of projects, which made it so interesting. Then I became a chief medical officer of Planned Parenthood Southeast. And then I became a VP at a medical startup. So I pivoted my career many times. Each time it involved fear of starting over. Would I be successful? Why would I leave something that's good? And each time I'd say I was driven by really wanting my purpose to align with also feeling happy inside of what I'm doing. And the final pivot to writing really came out of nowhere. It wasn't planned, but it turned out I was kind of returning to my roots again. And in that sense, feeling very authentic because to write my memoir, I had to look back at my journals. It's all based on real journals. And I wrote a lot. I wrote ferociously. And I found out I even had wanted to be a writer when I was young, but I had forgotten that. I buried that. So that was kind of fun to rediscover. But as you say, writing is very hard, and it was a whole new field and world to be immersed in. And I have to say that writing my memoir, I had all of those same feelings of self-doubt that I was writing about being a medical student going to Everest. How could I do this? I'm not the best candidate. No one's going to want to, I can't, you know, no one's going to want to read my story. Who am I? All that stuff. So I think, we have these inner demons and we have to learn how to quiet those voices. For me, I've quieted them when I'm just so driven with purpose. I mean, I needed to get this book done no matter what. Once I started, nothing was going to stop me. And the thing I kept saying in my head was, anyone can write a book. I want to write a good book. That motivated me to work even harder, take a lot of classes. I have an amazing writing critique group, 3 women partners where we review everything each other writes. We try to make it as best as possible. We talk about all the emotional challenges, and that's helped a lot.
Yeah, I love that. That's fantastic. Well, I want to ask you about your bold choices in taking risks in the context that if you were to have someone in front of you, you're mentoring them, or maybe you do mentor women, but if someone was to ask you, what advice would you give to someone who's hesitating to take a leap towards something they deeply want to pursue?
Yes, I do mentor people, so I've had this happen, and you wouldn't be surprised that, of course, my approach is to go for it if it's something you really, really want. I mean, all of these questions, I mean, the only reason to take risks is if you really, really want that, right? You're not going to do it for some arbitrary thing that's not aligned with your heart and soul, right? There's always making the pro con list. But I think when you're asking the question, is this worth it? Is this what I really want to do? You also have to ask what you brought up before. What happens if I don't do it? Because there's that regret factor.
Mhm.
So I think the only reason to go forward is if it's really something that you want to do and love and you're willing to take the risk. But then you have to be a little bold and you have to realize you
Mhm.
might fail. I mean, the failure is part of the process. The writing world, oh my gosh, there is so much failure and rejection. People become proud of how many rejections they have because it means they're in the arena, they're submitting, a lot, so they're getting a lot of rejections. There's no other way around it. That was a little hard. Medicine is so linear. You work hard, you do this, you're successful. Writing, not so. You can work hard, you can do everything right, you may not be successful. But if it's something you really want to do, you just have to keep working at it.
Yeah. I think that's great advice because, again, we can either be bold and take a risk, like you were saying, when you decided to go with the team, or you can maybe say, well, the cons really just, for me, far outweigh what the pros are. And the cons probably could have outweighed, for you when you were trying to determine whether to go on the Everest trip, especially with the biggest one being that there was a real imminent danger there that if anything happened, which you said there was a lot of things that happened, that there was the real risk of not having that support. So, but you still did it. And I think that's really, for me, like that's why when I decided to do it, I had a real fear for many years. And then I became obsessed with my fear and studying my fear. And my fear was around sharks. So I studied them. And I thought, well, I can either let them keep me from enjoying something that I wanted to do and have the opportunity to do. And I would be safe or as safe as possible with, several other licensed and well-trained divers who are going to be with us, or I could just go home and then look back all these years later and say, I wish I had done it because I would
Yeah.
have missed out on something. So I love that.
Yeah. And sometimes, so some people who have read my book, it's had that desired outcome of them thinking about their life and the risks they take and the things they really want to do. But sometimes it's not even big things like scuba diving with sharks or going to Everest. A friend's a friend read the book and he said, we have to do this move, like moving homes. And it's made me really sad because we've been in this home for 30 years. But somehow reading your book made me feel like I can do this new start. He just felt better about that situation. So it can be little things too. Or I don't know if that's little, but, things that are very different.
You said something that just sparked something for me. I really love that. Your friend reading your book got the courage enough to say to himself that I can do this because if you could do that, I can do this. And sometimes it's that one person who takes the first step that can inspire someone else to take a step that they're afraid of. And I
Yeah.
love that's where he got inspired from, was reading your book to say, you know what, I can do this. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, change is scary in any
Any
aspect of
change.
life.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Any change.
but yeah, exactly. And it's like either we allow ourselves to either go kicking and screaming. Unfortunately, we don't have control. When things are changing, we don't have control. So we can either go willingly or we can go kicking and screaming, but it's still going to happen. So
Yep.
I love the fact that that he got that courage. And I appreciate you shared that part of the story, because I think that really is something nice for the listeners to hear, that, even that can be something scary, and yet someone in your life can inspire you to have the courage to take action. So I love that.
Yeah. So when you're scared of change, because it's absolutely true, you can't control the outcome. What if you look at it as an opportunity? What opportunity is going to come out of this change? Because opportunity is the good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, looking ahead, what's next? There any upcoming projects, goals, dreams that you're excited to pursue and you can share with us today?
I'm excited to take my writing further, and I'm speaking quite a bit. So that's exciting too, to think about the different topics related to my book. And I have a grandbaby, so I'm excited to be a grandma. And yeah, that's about it.
No, I love that. Well, congratulations to having your first grandbaby. I love that. Well, Mimi, thank you so much for spending time with me today and sharing your experiences, from your inspiring journey in medicine to your reflections on self-care, being open and honest, and your incredible story of climbing Everest. Like I said, I can't wait to get into the book. I've really enjoyed hearing about how you've navigated life's challenges while pursuing your passions and making a meaningful impact on the world. Your stories for me is a powerful reminder of what's possible when we embrace courage and stay true to ourselves. So thanks so much for being here. I appreciate you.
I love that, Leslie. It was an absolute privilege and honor to speak with you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And to our listeners, if you would like to connect with Mimi directly, learn more about her memoir, Tap Dancing on Everest, you can find all of her contact information and links in the show notes. Like I said, I've just purchased the book myself. I can't wait to read it, to learn more about her incredible journey and what she gained along the way. Remember, every step you take on your life's journey creates a ripple effect that touches everyone around you. So continue to move forward with intention, embrace the small changes, and remember that even the smallest steps can create the biggest impact as you shape the extraordinary life you are meant to live. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep believing, and keep designing your extraordinary life one day at a time. Thank you for joining me on Her Extraordinary Life by Design. I hope you've been inspired and empowered by the incredible stories shared on this show. If you enjoyed this episode and the conversations we've had, I would greatly appreciate if you could take a moment to leave a review. Your feedback and support mean the world to me, and it will help others discover the podcast and join our empowering community. Remember to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Together, we can continue to learn from these amazing women, uncover their extraordinary journeys, and be motivated to create our own lives by design. Thank you again for tuning in. Until next time, stay empowered and keep shaping your extraordinary life one day at a time.
Electricast.